You may have heard about the Great Resignation or the Big Quit, with more people in the US and the UK quitting their jobs. But to understand why this is happening, let's first look at how the job market works and what makes employment higher or lower. Employment is determined by demand and supply. On the demand side, firms recruit more workers when it's profitable to do so. For example, when incomes are rising and consumers want more of their goods and services. On the supply side, most people look for work because they need a labor income. The higher the demand for workers is, and the more people are willing to work, the higher total employment is going to be. And usually, when growth picks up, employment follows and wages often rise. In recessions, just the reverse happens. Growth and employment fall and wages decline. Now, let's look at recent events and how the pandemic affected the labor market. When the pandemic hit, it reduced both the demand for workers and people's willingness to work. The demand for workers fell because consumer demand for services like restaurants and hotels was so much lower. In some industries, in fact, businesses even had to shut down and workers were laid off. Other workers, though, decided to drop out on their own. For instance, some women chose to stay home and look after their children when schools and childcare facilities closed, while some older workers decided to step out. But the pandemic didn't affect all countries the same way. In emerging markets and low-income countries, people are often employed outside of official channels, in what's called the informal economy. Think, for example, of street vendors. These informal workers were hit especially hard by the pandemic because their jobs involve more face-to-face interactions and they cannot be performed remotely. Also, because these jobs aren't officially registered with the government, informal workers don't benefit from the job retention schemes that many countries implemented to avoid mass layoffs among formal workers. And since many emerging markets and low-income countries were struggling with higher levels of inequality and weaker social protection systems to start with, the impact of the pandemic was just more dire. In advanced economies, the recovery is now underway and moving at a fast pace. Jobs are coming back. However, some workers are not. As a result, we're seeing a sharp increase in unfilled job vacancies and a pickup in wage growth in countries like the US and the UK. And the big question is why? One factor is just the lingering pandemic. Many workers, such as older workers, still have health concerns given the continued spread of the virus. In the US, women with young children are still more likely to stay home than they were 2 years ago because of prolonged school closures and scarce affordable childcare options. Finally, there may well have been a change in worker preferences. Workers have been quitting not just contact-intensive jobs, but also those that are physically strenuous or lack flexibility on working hours. That leaves us with one final question. How can policymakers help? How can they encourage more people to go back to work? Well, controlling the pandemic remains key. It will help older workers and those in contact-intensive industries go back to work. Also, good training programs and labor laws that facilitate telework can help less skilled workers find the new job opportunities that they've been looking for. And finally, wage growth should help. It has picked up in the US and the UK, which is good news, especially for hard-to-fill, lower-skilled jobs. More wage increases will help attract more workers into these jobs.